How does game change if I want to attract a life partner? It seems like PUA is focused on short-term flings. So this idea that if you go out and actively meet girls, like you go out and go to the park and meet girls, or go to a bar and meet girls, or something like that, that somehow that has to be for a short-term fling, whereas if you met a girl a different way, that wouldn't be the case. Now, the only reason why that would be the case has nothing to do with game, it has to do with circumstance. Let's say you meet someone and their parents and your parents have been friends for your entire lives, and that's how you met. Well, obviously, there's going to be maybe more things in common in terms of lifestyle, and obviously there's going to be a lot more pressure from your family and their family to maybe make something happen, right? So there's external forces that may make a difference. And so in that sense, yes, it would make sense that maybe you meet your life partner through a similarity, because you have more things in common, or because you're just kind of forced together more in that context. And a lot of people also meet their significant others that way because simply they don't have the skills to meet them through going out and meeting a random stranger, right? If you are thrown together on a blind date, or if you're in school with someone for, you know, dozens of years and get to know them and then eventually date them your senior year in high school, that's obviously a different scenario than having to convey a lot of value very, very quickly. But let's compare, for example, a cold approach versus an online dating scenario. Now there are a lot fewer of those other factors involved, and you'll see a lot of short-term flings that come from a cold approach, a lot of short-term flings that come from online dating, a lot of relationships and marriages that could come from cold approach, a lot of relationships and marriages that would come from online dating. Now, you still do have a little bit of a skew for online dating simply because there are demographic factors. For example, you're looking for people a certain age or certain education level, whereas in cold approach, it could be more random. However, depending where you did cold approach, that might not be the case. For example, if you did cold approach at museums and you like educated people, maybe you'll do well there. Or let's say you're in college and you're doing cold approach on your college campus, which honestly, on your college campus, you should be doing a semi-warm approach style, but let's say you're at least walking up to strangers and starting conversations on your college campus. Well, now you have a lot of things in common, and a lot of relationships and a lot of long-term future marriage kind of things could come from meeting someone in college walking around your campus, which is essentially like a cold approach. So what I'm getting at here is that a lot more of whether or not a relationship will become long-term will have to do with the specific people involved in it and the circumstances around them, not so much about the game, whether it's an active game or like there's tactics used or this or that. Things like having commonalities, things like having a similar life view and similar socioeconomic status, having friends in common, all of those things will make a long-term future a little bit more likely. However, even with complete strangers, there are lots and lots of very good long-term relationships that do come out of cold approach game. And there's this idea, I think, and I think this is where the question is actually coming from, that because game has tactics, that tactics could lead to a one-night stand, but tactics could not lead to a long-term relationship. And that shows a misunderstanding of what tactics really are and how they work. Number one, any tactic you see in game is a copy of what naturals do anyway. It's a copy of what guys who don't know game are doing that works, and then we've adapted it, maybe made it more powerful, etc. But it's essentially something that already existed. It's not a new or gimmicky thing. Beyond that, tactics only work if you're the right person delivering the tactic. If you taught a guy who is inherently unattractive and nervous and has poor body language and carries himself badly a bunch of lines, he would deliver those lines and they would be incongruent and he'd come off as low value. However, the same lines delivered by someone who's high value would work very, very well. And the lines, especially the upfront kind of more attraction-based lines, only form a very small fraction of the overall interaction. In fact, to a large extent, the reason for any lines that are gamey or slightly gimmicky is mainly just to get attention from the girl so that you can have a normal conversation. And you're going to spend about 95% of even that initial interaction having normal conversation, maybe 5% gamey. And as the relationship develops, second date, third date, a month in, a year in, that ratio is going to shift even more to the point where you're using like 1% game or 0.5% game in terms of your interaction, and mostly you are just being yourself. All right, so I think part of the reason for this question is this idea that like, oh, I don't want to be doing tactics with a girl. And yeah, I could use a tactic to get a girl into bed, but I wouldn't do it in a relationship. Well, here's the thing with that. If you want to have a relationship with someone, you have to first get them to see you a second time. And all of the tactics that work to do that in-game also work to do that to form a relationship. And if you want to have a sexual relationship with someone, you do have to sleep with them that first time. And all the same things that work for that to happen and then lead to a relationship are the same things that work for that to happen and lead to a one-night stand. So a lot of the same elements are still there. In fact, the vast majority of the same elements are still there. However, here are a few things you might want to change in your game if you want long-term relationships. And by the way, these aren't even changes if you're doing game right, but they are changes from some of the ways guys do game wrong. Number one, don't lie to the girl in your game, right? If you're lying to the girl to get her into bed, yes, that is detrimental to a long-term relationship because it's hard to keep up a lie for years and years and years, or even months and months and months. So don't lie, don't deceive, don't manipulate. Be yourself. Be your best self, but be yourself. Don't tell her you do a different job than you do and then try and live up to that lie. Don't indicate to her that you spend crazy amounts of money all the time and live a lavish lifestyle when you don't and can't afford it. Second change you might want to make if you're looking for a life partner, but again, this isn't even a big change. This is the same thing you'd do if you just wanted an ongoing relationship, even if it was months or years as opposed to your whole life. Let the girl into your world and allow yourself to go into her world. Meet her friends and family. Let her friends and family and her meet your friends and family. Again, I mentioned at the start of this video, one of the biggest factors in something becoming long-term actually has to do with the circumstances of the people. And if you have friends in common, that helps. If you have family in common and you know each other's family and there's that sort of like pressure on you guys to be together, or that sort of support network encouraging you guys to be together, that actually leads to a long-term situation. Now, obviously, if guy A meets girl B and they have nobody in common, that support network doesn't exist. But if they meet each other's friends and family over a period of a few months, now that begins to exist. Adjustment number 3, and again, this isn't an adjustment to how you do game, it's an adjustment to where you do game and who you're looking for. Game in a place where you think you're likely to meet the type of girl you want as a long-term partner. So let's say, for example, you want a stable, intelligent, well-educated girl to help you raise a family with. And you go do game at a strip club and try and pick up strippers. No offense to strippers, but demographically, they're probably not what you're looking for given what I just laid out prior to this. Or let's say that you want a girl who's very health conscious, doesn't drink, and is very religious. Well, maybe night game isn't as good an option for you late at night in a bar, but day game in a park might be an amazing option for you in terms of where and how to meet the girl, right? But again, that's not changing the game. It's not changing the tactics. It's changing the place that you employ it. It's changing the selection of who you choose to approach. So going back to the original question, the tactics of game itself are not impairing your ability to meet a life partner. In fact, for any given girl you walk up to who is a potential life partner, your odds of her becoming that life partner increase dramatically if she's attracted to you, wants to see you again, is intrigued by you, i.e. if you do all the things that game does. However, game does have the drawback for meeting a life partner that you are two complete strangers with perhaps less in common and definitely fewer people in common, fewer shared connections. So building that shared connection, building that habit is very, very good. The other thing that game and cold approach has against it in terms of meeting a life partner is that you may not come from the same demographic, you may not have the same things in common. And that can be solved by gaming where the people who have those things in common with you are, right? If you really are into sports and you like a girl who's into sports, go meet a girl at CrossFit. Or go join a co-ed sports league or something like that. Or go sign up for a race and do like, a training program with groups of people and meet girls there. That's a way you're gonna meet girls with something in common. If you're very educated, go meet girls at a library or a college campus or at some kind of a literary event or something like that, okay? You can control these variables even with cold approach game. So, all things being equal, if you met a girl and she's known your friends and family for her entire life, yes, you are more likely to meet that girl and marry that girl than you would be if you met a random girl on the street. However, you can do a lot to increase your odds with a random girl of it being a life partner, i.e. where you meet her, how you meet her, what you do after you meet her. And also, there probably are only a few girls that are attractive and eligible who have known your parents your whole life. There are thousands of girls on cold approach who are potentially available as long-term relationship partners. So even if any individual girl who knows you and your family would be a more likely candidate, overall, there's a higher percentage if you learn cold approach that you will, in fact, meet a great and compatible long-term partner. So I hope this answers your question. I hope this dispels some of the myths about cold approach, and I hope this helps you with how you can actually use cold approach for long-term relationships and not just hookups. If you have any questions, comments, put them below, and hopefully I will see you on the next video. Take care.